Whispyr here, with another video. This time about dungeons. It's the same video, just dungeons. Also, while we're here, I just wanna say thank you guys. You guys seem to really be enjoying the videos. I appreciate that a lot. Guides will be out soon, but I am going to go off the grid for a while. And by off the grid, I mean just in guide writing hell. So sorry, I'll be gone a few days. But aside from that, let's get into this. So this is your standard AoE dungeon Mythic Plus build, right? There's a lot of plate spinning that's going on. You're gonna have to manually dot. You're gonna have to maintain a lot of debuffs and buffs and all that. So it's gonna be a lot of plate spinning, management, dot up time, ton of work. If you are unfamiliar with some of the concepts like snapshotting, Shadow Dance, and Kingsbane, I'm not going to go over them again. Watch the last video where I explained them in single target. Those will hopefully explain them to you, but I'm not going to go over everything again. I'm just going to try and keep it a little bit shorter and go into the AoE specifically because I have a lot to cover. So with that out of the way, key talent talk time. So first off, we have Caustic Spatter. This is a new talent which is coming in 10.2. If you mutilate a target, it'll apply Caustic Spatter. It needs to have Rupture and Deadly Poison applied, but you should have those anyways. And from that point on, you basically have Blade Flurry from Outlaw. Any damage you deal that is poison damage gets reflected onto nearby enemies. This works with Kingsbane, it works with Poison Bomb, it works with Envenom, works with Vicious Venoms if you run that for some reason. So it works with a lot of stuff. Now, this is important mainly because of Kingsbane. Kingsbane is going to be a big cooldown in AoE because it's going to do a huge hit of damage, and all of that damage is going to get reflected onto nearby enemies, right? So, something to keep in mind, something that's kind of important. The next new thing is Sanguine Blades. We don't play this in single target, but in AoE it makes a comeback. So, while you're above 50% of your maximum energy, all of your bleeds consume 2 energy to duplicate 30% of any damage dealt. This is very powerful when you have a lot of targets. The less targets you have, the less good this becomes because the less energy you have. So there's sort of a push and pull situation going on, where in lower target counts, the energy that it's eating is very important, and so the effect is not as good. Whereas in higher target counts, you have a lot of targets, a lot of bleeds out, and the energy doesn't matter as much. We don't particularly play around this effect at all, but it's gonna be, like, your spec's gonna be slow in AoE, or at least in like low target AoE, because it's eating energy, right? The other thing in connection to that is going to be Carnage. Carnage allows your Garrote and Rupture to apply to 2 additional nearby enemies, so 3 total when used from stealth and for 10 seconds after breaking stealth. Important caveat here is that Shadow Dance does not count as breaking stealth. It just gives you the effects of stealth, which means that while Dance is active, you have 6 seconds, the duration of Dance. All of those 6 seconds in Dance also you apply Carnage, so you can spread them out. However, when Dance breaks, you don't get the 10 seconds additionally. You only get the 6 from Shadow Dance. After that, it's no Carnage, right? Vanish gives you stealth, therefore it also gives you the full 10 seconds. Cool? Cool. Sudden Demise, right next to it here. Bleed damage increased by 10%. This is a passive, the same way that Shrouded Suffocation is a passive 20% Garrote damage. And this multiplies everything. Crimson Tempest, it multiplies Garrote, Rupture, Bone Spike is a bleed, right? Passive, global, 10%, good stuff. The effect itself is really cool, but not something that we particularly want to play around. Targets below 35% health instantly bleed out and take fatal damage when the remaining bleed damage you would deal to them exceeds 150% of their remaining health. It's a little bit wordy, but essentially if you have a target that has, for example, 10,000 HP on it, if you have 15,000 damage worth of bleeds, so that's the combined total of Crimson Tempest, Garrote, Rupture, whatever, it instantly kills them, if they're under 35% health, right? So if they have 10,000 health, you need 15,000. If they have 100,000 health, you need 150,000. Whatever the number is, it's 150%. Bone Spike, since it's an infinite dot, it calculates 30 seconds of Bone Spike damage whenever Sudden Demise tries to trigger. So, no cheese there. And also, it's not worth playing around because, yeah, Bone Spike kind of sucks. What's the next thing? I have notes. Crimson Tempest, right? So they changed Crimson Tempest. It no longer does instant damage. It is just a dot now. But the dot portion does increased damage if it hits multiple targets. So you see that second paragraph says deals extra damage when multiple enemies are afflicted, increasing by 20% per target up to 100%. So this means that with one target, you don't have multiple targets, so you don't get any bonus. When you add a second target, you are now dealing extra damage to multiple enemies, right? Increased by 20% per target. So that's 20%, 40%. So 2 targets, it's 40%. 1 target, you don't get any bonus. That ramps up to 5 targets where you get 100%, and then it stops. So AoE, good. Single target, really bad. That's about it. The other thing to note is Scent of Blood here. Each enemy afflicted by your Rupture increases your agility by 4% up to a maximum of 20, so that's on 5 targets. This is worth tracking, and you will want to get more Scent stacks. Scent is really, really strong, especially for your cooldowns and Kingsbane and Deathmark and all that. Scent of Blood is good. This is really good. It's almost worth talenting into in single target. It is really good. I cannot stress this. It's really, really good. It's really good. So, rotationally speaking then, we're trying to spread our dots to as many targets as possible, right? In general, as many targets as possible. Now, you will hit a cap at some point where you just simply can't spread anymore. Obviously, if you have 10 seconds of Carnage, you can spread out like 4 Garrotes and then a bunch of Ruptures. You can vanish and spread out more Ruptures. So the sky's the limit in that regard. Generally, I would say that you probably shouldn't go any higher than like 8 or 9 targets. Especially without Carnage, you'll have a lot of energy issues. And so you want to kind of maintain a balance here. And that balance is between running out of energy and having enough to cast your spells. I'm going to go over that more in terms of saturation, because that is a term that we have coined in order to talk about these things. But for now, I just want to go over sort of the opener and the general rotation. We can talk about specifics a little bit later on, okay? So, from stealth, obviously, we have our first dilemma, which is we have nothing up. What do? You always want to prioritize getting Slice and Dice up as well as your bleeds. Slice and Dice maintains itself through Envenom, and we're going to be casting Envenom a lot, so getting Slice and Dice up early is really good. And then Garrotes from stealth are the next priority. Ruptures for Scent are the next priority. And then Crimson Tempest is the last priority. So, for example, on this pack of 5 here, I'm going to Garrote twice. It's going to spread everything. And then I'm going to get 1 Rupture out, get my Slice up, and then I can get a last Rupture out here, and that spreads to everything. And now I'm going to Crimson Tempest, and I can start thinking about other stuff now, right? I can start thinking about getting a little bit of Caustic up. And now my Garrotes are starting to drop, so I'm just going to spread those again. And now I'm going to get my Caustic up again. And so the plate spinning here is exactly what it looks like, right? I have all of my debuffs, and so there's a priority list of which debuffs go in which order, right? I can choose to refresh my my Caustic Spatter. However, if I'm running out of dots everywhere, maybe I don't necessarily want to do that, right? So like here I'm starting to run out of dots. I don't have a way to spread them reliably. So here I'm gonna get that up again, spread my Crimson Tempest, and now this is the real crunch time. The real crunch time here is what do I do when things start dropping? So I suggest just kind of going through, getting your bleeds back up, and then going from there. If you need to drop Crimson Tempest in order to make sure that you can get your bleeds up, that's perfectly fine. And so this is the general rotation if you're out of cooldowns, right? If you're not from stealth and you're out of cooldowns, you're generally just trying to keep the plate spinning as much as possible. Crimson Tempest is still doing a lot of your damage. You're trying to get your set stacks up. So here I'm missing one. Now I'm back up to 20. And then whenever you have a moment of downtime, you can sort of get a couple of Envenoms out, maintain Crimson Tempest and all that. So now I need to go back in. My Ruptures are dropping everywhere, right? And so the cooldowns make this a lot easier, obviously. Now, the conversation about stealth and if stealth is important. I released a 30-minute video on it. I could go over it again, but I'm still doing roughly the same amount of damage. I'm still sustaining quite a bit. And a lot of it, I don't want to link. I just want to, can I just view them? Wait, no. Okay, whatever. We're just going to look at it like this then. So you can see that in terms of the damage breakdown, it's a lot of bleeds, Fan and Knives, Caustic Spatter, and then the tier set, right? And this is without stealth, without cooldowns. I mean, I did Vanish, right, in order to show off, like, the general concept. But you can see here that most of it is actually going to be Sanguine Blades from having enough energy. It's Scent of Blood giving you a bunch of damage, because you're getting 20% more agility. Crimson Tempest is doing a lot, right? And so your general flow here is trying to maintain bleeds the entire time. Obviously, going into stealth and getting more bleeds up is going to give you more opportunity to go into Caustic Spatter and all of that stuff, but it's not going to be the end all, right? So let's look at it with cooldowns this time. Now for my cooldowns, obviously I have Deathmark, I have Kingsbane, Shadow Dance, and I'm going to do basically a single target style of opener, but I'm going to make sure that my bleeds are spread beforehand, right? In general, this is a lot kind of more hectic, and you will be dropping some stuff. My priority in terms of trying to get things out is Crimson Tempest should be the last thing, right? If you get your Deathmark, your Kingsbane, your Shiv out, at the very end of it, getting your Crimson Tempest out is fine, but you want to prioritize getting the Groats from stealth, getting the Scent of Blood up, getting Caustic up, going into your cooldowns, getting the Kingsbane up. Crimson Tempest then comes as the last part of that. So I'm just going to go through it, and we'll talk about it afterwards. So first off, Slice, right? Gonna get some Ruptures, on this. I'm gonna pick one here, and then we're just gonna go into it, like so. And then I'm going to try and spread some dots. Don't forget my Shiv, even though I'm very bad at forgetting my Shiv. And now the Caustic runs out, and we're going, right? We're good to go. So generally speaking, that is sort of how you would handle your cooldowns. Now, in that case, I didn't use Dance for bleeds, right? I used it mainly for the Kingsbane. You can use it for the bleeds, however. So if I just continue on in my rotation, doing my thing, right, you'll see my energy is a little bit sad because I'm not spreading bleeds as much right now. Need to get those back up. I'm actually going to let Crimson Tempest drop for a second here in order to get caught up on my bleeds a little bit more. And then we'll see here, we have the next Shadow Dance coming. So I'm actually going to Shadow Dance for the bleeds here, and then Kingsbane. Get my Caustic Spatter up, and now I'm going to go back into this, right? So in that case, I used Shadow Dance a bit more in terms of getting my bleeds back set up versus trying to maximize my Kingsbane damage, right? So those are sort of the two ideas you can go for. Which one you pick is a lot more reliant on the priority damage that you need, right? If you really need something to die, maybe try and, like, you know, go more into the single target part of it. If your bleeds are already up, you don't need to refresh them necessarily with Shadow Dance. All of this stuff kind of combines together And it allows you to make these decisions on the fly when you're in a Mythic Plus situation. Maybe you have a big pull and you need Shadow Dance in order to spread your bleeds out. That's fine. Spread your bleeds with Shadow Dance, and then after the Shadow Dance is done, pick your target, Kingsbane, go into Spatter, do all your stuff, right? So you have those decisions. Now, on 3 target, this will be a lot slower, so I'm just going to show you generally how much slower this is. So I'm going to get up my bleeds. These are all of my bleeds now. And so if I start to get my Crimson Tempest up, I'm not going to use cooldowns here. I'm just going to kind of go through the motions. So here you'll see I get my Crimson Tempest up again. And then I need to refresh Garrote here. And you'll see I'm starting to kind of starve on energy a fair bit. Now, in these situations, this is intended, for the record, but in these situations, you want to try and still have the same concepts, right? It's the same concept of pooling for energy, getting everything in your tier set, all that stuff, making sure you maintain your bleeds throughout. But this is going to be a lot slower, a lot more methodical, and you will have to think, right? You will have to think. So you want to make sure priority number 1, getting up your bleeds, right? Your bleeds are your most important part. So if I let Crimson Tempest drop here for a second, that is perfectly fine to me. I would rather let Crimson Tempest drop for a second than lose everything, right? Now I can use T here in order to get me through, but I'm still prioritizing my tier bonus after with my Caustic, trying to make sure that I keep Crimson Tempest up. And so if I let my dots drop here, you'll see this entire thing kind of slows to a crawl. The thing to note here, though, is that Sanguine Blades, while it's very good, is not the end-all be-all, right? The fact that I'm under 150 here, it's not great, but it's also not the end of the world, right? Sanguine Blades in Cleave, as I mentioned, is a lot worse. And you're mainly looking for it to eat energy when you have too much. So if you drop under 150 in these situations, it's perfectly fine. The main part is just remembering to always keep up your dots, right? Always keep up your dots the entire time. And so this is sort of the back and forth that happens, right? The back and forth being, I'm running out of energy, I need more dots. Having to spin Crimson Tempest and then losing out on a bit of tier set damage, Scent of Blood tracking. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but it feels fantastic to me. It's exactly what I want out of a dot spec. And you have so much control over your damage with Caustic Spatter that it doesn't feel restrictive, right? You can still get out a ton of single target damage and a ton of priority damage with very little effort. It's the same gameplay that you saw before in Mythic Plus with Assassination. You get your bleeds out, and then you basically go into one target. But this time around, you actually have things that can contribute to it. So if I go back in, for example, without trying too much, if this is my priority target, I can simply go in, get my Envenom up, get Caustic up, go into my Kingsbane, and I'm going, right? I'm going. I can get another Garrote out from the end of my my Shadow Dance. I don't really need Crimson Tempest until the very end, but all of this damage is coming. All of this damage is coming from Kingsbane now, right? And I'm doing a big amount of priority damage, and Caustic Spatter is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this regard. So those are kind of your options. So let's talk about some more conceptual stuff, the advanced stuff. Pooling, first of all, still a thing. As I was mentioning on the 3-target Cleave dummies over here, being in Sanguine is important. It's not necessarily the end-all of it. If you don't have the energy to be above 150, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So I wouldn't be bothered about it too much. You can be under 150. Think of it as a bonus more than something you have to adhere to, right? Now, the saturation point that I was talking about is around 8 bleeds. So you see, if I maintain my bleeds on these dummies here, I should be able to fully saturate myself with a Crimson Tempest and gain energy. So I can just spam Fan of Knives here, and you'll see my energy doesn't really go down all that much. So I have 10 bleeds out right now, and my energy's fine, right? My energy's perfectly fine. That's what we mean by saturation. Now, the moment I'm just gonna Rupture here. So let's say, for example, I only Rupture. Now if I Crimson Tempest on 5 targets, you'll see my energy go down. I'm gonna start losing energy because I just don't have enough, right? Toss Envenom out, and my energy's dropping. This is what happens when you don't have enough targets with bleeds. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, Sanguine Blades and 300 energy make this a pretty big window that you can play around with. But in general, when you aren't saturated, when your energy is going down, you want to toss out another Garrote, want to toss out another Rupture, check your scent counter to see if you have your Ruptures up, and go from there. The other min-maxy thing that I want to discuss is, when do I cast Crimson Tempest, right? I've been talking about this whole thing of Crimson Tempest. It's okay to let it drop. It's okay to not let it drop. The rule for Crimson Tempest is you generally want to have 4 bleeds out before you Crimson Tempest. So if you do 1 Garrote and then 1 Rupture, this is 6 bleeds. You can technically start Crimson Tempesting, but your cooldowns take priority, right? If you have 2 targets, for example, and you get 4 bleeds out on those 2 targets, you're good to go. If you just Garrote, getting your Crimson Tempest out early, generally not the move, because Crimson Tempest will start eating away at your energy. So those are kind of the things to keep in mind. I know it's a lot of kind of hand-wavy stuff, but hopefully that makes sense. Caustic Spatter is sort of the thing that you do once you have your bleeds up. And then while you're sort of in your rotation, you're focusing on your bleeds first and foremost. So let's just do like a little bit on the dummies here, on the 5 target dummies. And then we'll go from there and then talk about some talent choices that we can make, some differences, and we'll finish it off. Hopefully within the same time frame. So this is full with everything. I'm just going to get some Ruptures out, some Garrotes out. And then I'm going to designate this one as my priority. And then here we go into our cooldown stack. Now, you can do something like this, where you get out some more bleeds, which I'm going to do, and then get my Crimson Tempest up here. I'm going to hold my Vanish in order to get out more bleeds later. And on that time, like on this sequence of cooldowns, I decided to go very heavy into single target. So here's my Vanish. I'm going to just get out all of my bleeds again to make sure I am fully sustaining, get my Caustic back up, and my Crimson Tempest. This is requiring a lot of energy for me to narrate this, by the way. So I might be making mistakes. Go easy on me. I'm not perfect. But you'll see here, generally, now this is when, you know, my weak orders start lighting up all sorts of different colors of the rainbow, and it's time for me to start thinking about my cooldowns again. So I'm going to get another set up, and then we're going to go here, boom, boom, boom. Get my Mutilate. So I used my my Dance there in order to get one extra set of dots out, right? I saw that my dots were getting low. I wanted to get an extra set out, so I went and did that. But I didn't fully focus on the dot portion, right? Now this next sequence, I might want to actually fully focus on the dots, because these are getting a little sketchy. I want to get my Crimson Tempest back up now that I have enough dots rolling. I see my scent stacks are low, so I'm going to go and get my scent stacks back up on this guy, for example. Good stuff, good stuff. Refresh here. Get a Garrote out, another Crimson Tempest. And so now I'm just kind of waiting for my next cooldown phase, right? And I'm dipping below the threshold, but that's fine. All right, we don't have a big issue with that. So here we go. I'm going to use this Shadow Dance for dots, right? So we're going to Shadow Dance here, get some dots up. And then boom, 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 boom. And then we're going to get our Caustic up, and now we're going to go. And again, we can Vanish here for some extra bleeds. Get Rupture up on these guys. Refresh my Crimson Tempest. And we're back onto Spatter, onto this guy. And so you see this is sort of the on-off, right? The on-off phase. Right now, I have a little bit of time to get some spatters out. But once my dots start dropping, it's time for me to go back into maintenance mode. So here I'm maintaining. You can kind of prep yourself on one target, get your combo points, move on to another target here. So that's something you can do. And now that my cooldowns are back up, I'm going to go right back into it again, right? Same combination as always. Get my dots up a little. Now there I saw that my dots were getting a little low, so I decided to spread them first before going into the Kingsbane. But my Kingsbane here still did quite a bit of damage, chunked quite hard. You saw the numbers from the Caustic Spatter going in. So now I have a lot of dots I need to refresh, because I didn't entirely prep it. That's okay. No big issues. We have about 20 seconds for our next cooldowns, so I'm just going to go ahead and spread them out. Good stuff. One more set of a couple Ruptures here. And a Garrote here, maybe. Get a Rupture here. And now we're going to prep by going into Caustic, and then here, here, here. And then again, this Vanish I'm going to use this time at the end of my death mark here. I didn't shiv. That's my bad. But you can see how there's really a lot going on, right? There's a ton of stuff going on here. But this is generally the idea behind sort of AoE and cleave situations. I'm just going to use the shiv here in order to get it out. But yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of plate spinning, a lot of things to maintain. In general, though, there's a really good balance of min-max stuff that you can try and do in order to get the last little ooze of AoE out versus just the most of it, right? Like most of my damage here, Caustic Spatter, Crimson Tempest, Garrote. Alright, Sanguine Blades is passive, it's doing its own thing. Rupture, I'm just getting them out. And then Kingsbane. The tier set is doing a bit, Poison Bomb's doing a bit, and Venom's doing a bit. But in general, the entire idea here is if you have enough dots up for you to fill every GCD, and you're maintaining Crimson Tempest, it pretty much plays itself. Which sounds weird after I just said that it's a lot of plate spinning, but it's like on a conceptual level it plays itself, right? If you have your bleeds out and you have the energy for it, it's like you're already in the machine. And so I actually was testing this yesterday on 5 targets, and I got into this sort of zen thing where I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go into my cooldowns, my Rupture's gonna be 30 seconds, then I'm gonna have 30 seconds of downtime where I need to refresh the Ruptures, then my cooldowns come up. So I'm sort of like cooldowns, not cooldowns, cooldowns, not cooldowns. And I was hitting dummies for like 25, 30 minutes straight, like AoE dummies. Eventually it was almost cathartic. So I really love what they did. And you kind of get into a kind of a flow state where you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I need more energy, time to put more dots up. And you just go and you go dot, 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 dot. Your cooldowns come up, you choose one target, you slam it out. Really love it. I can't say enough how much I love it. And I'm getting a little bit rambly, so let's finish off the video talking about talents. So one of the options that you have is to drop T and go this way. I know a lot of people love acrobatic strikes. If you want acrobatic strikes, this is fine. You would just play Echoing Reprimand. Echoing Reprimand doesn't matter what you use it on, you just want to use the combo points on something. So Crimson Tempest is fine, Rupture's fine, all of that's fine. The other option you could do, if you're really cringe, is you could do something like this or something like this. Neither one of these options is any good, but if you really hate Echoing Reprimand, you really hate T, and you don't want the extra button, you can do that. You could even go something like this, even though it's a bit pretty, let's say it's a sizable damage loss, but if you really hate buttons that much, I'd go for it, man. In terms of the spec tree, you always want this structure. You always want Shrouded, Sense of Blood, Sudden Demise, Indiscriminate Carnage. And then whatever you do with these points kind of depends. So the first one you can do is like this, which is the standard version of the build. It gives you a lot more single target. But if you're trying to go into AoE, you can skip the Dragon Tempered Blades and go this path instead and get Arterial Precision and Zoldyck. This will give you some extra Execute, which will help Sudden Demise slightly. But in general, this is a huge single target loss. This is about a 15% loss in single target. Most people don't think that it's worth playing this. And dropping this to go like this, for example, is simply not worth it. This would be more single target, but you're dropping so much of your AoE by dropping these 3 points that it's just not worth it. But in general, this is sort of the idea. You could play this on Raging Weeks, for example. If you really need the extra Dispel and Rage, Arterial does a great job of that. Dropping Kingsbane technically is an option, but you would drop it for like something that doesn't really matter, because you can't grab Kingsbane. Like, you can't grab another one. You can't grab Dragon Tempered here, for example, without... I don't know, it's really weird. Like, why would you do that if you could just do this? So I don't really agree with dropping Kingsbane. There have been some people that drop Caustic Spatter. I'm just gonna let the damage meter sit here and don't. It's not an option. Caustic Spatter is just so good. Why? Yeah, those are kind of, it's a little bit more rigid, but it's more like one build versus the other build versus just talents that you could swap in single target, which is why I wanted to show this off. There have also been builds that go like this, which are really crazy. This really slows you down in single target. I mean, this is like lethargic in single target. It's even too slow for me, and that's coming from the guy who always complains that the spec is too fast. Like, if I just go onto this this one right here, and I kind of do my thing in single target, right? And I'm just whatever. Doesn't really matter what's happening here. But you'll see that I will very quickly run out of T charges. I'm kind of already out of T, but yeah, pooling here is going to be a nightmare. Especially with Sanguine, once you get above 150, now you're sitting here and it's a struggle. It's definitely a struggle. So you see my pooling weak aura that I showed off in the last video. It's definitely screaming at me for stuff. But even it's sitting there and it's like, yeah, man, you got nothing. Like, you have nothing to work with. And this is sort of why this build kind of sucks for Mythic Plus. It's not because the AoE is bad, it's just because, holy hell, you have no energy whatsoever doing any of this. It's really rough. It's really rough. AoE damage, good stuff. But man, if you get to a boss fight, you are in some pain. You're in for a world of pain. So that's why I generally don't recommend this build. I would recommend, going into Dragon Temper Blades instead with the original build, not going Vicious Venoms as much as it helps your single target recover from this. It's just miserable to play. Don't do it. Can you stop being in combat? The last thing that I know I'm gonna have questions about, what do I drop for Iron Wire? Whispyr, what do I drop for Iron Wire? I'm doing +10s. I don't need Iron Wire. What do I drop? Oh, I hate the question so much because Iron Wire is so good, and it's, in my opinion, it's mandatory for everything. However, if you feel so required to drop Iron Wire for an additional whatever 1.5% of damage, you either put it in Twist the Knife for an easy straight time, you put it in Flying Daggers for the range increase, Improved Poisons is fine as a passive option, or Venom Rush for boss damage. It's one of these four. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Either one works. They're all roughly the same. It's about 1.5% to 2%. Just don't. Iron Wire is really good. It's not worth the damage loss. Just play Iron Wire, man. Just do it. Utility-wise as well, I want to point out this exists. Blackjack and Airborne Irritants. This is AoE Blind on a 1-minute cooldown, and enemies do 30% reduced damage afterwards. Really good stuff. Recommend. And yeah, that's it. Longer video, a little bit more rambly. I had notes, I followed them, but I'm a yapper. So I hope that helps. Again, questions in the comments. I'm going to be doing a Q&A, but I'm also in guide writing hell mode, so I'm going to be guide writing, and I'm gonna be stuck in a hole for a while. So I'll see you guys for the raid testing review tomorrow. No, Friday. Today's Wednesday. Friday raid testing. I'm gonna do my usual post-stream raid review, and then I'm probably gone for like a week. And then BlizzCon is happening, and I'm gonna be gone for like another week. But hopefully YouTube doesn't kill my algorithm. Okay, bye-bye. Have fun. Bye.